Well, this is a real, let me click the got it button. All right. Well, this is a real treat. If we were doing this next year in April, it would be 20 years since I graduated from Michigan. I'm originally from Michigan and have done quite a bit of travel since then. I lived in Japan for 4 years. A lot of stories that have come through my design career, and I hope to bring that to life for all of you today. I'm going to guess that you're curious about, what does life after Michigan look like? What are some of the possibilities in a design career? I have a lot of slides, but I hope this is not kind of a one-way activity today. I'd really enjoy any questions that you have while we go. And if you want to follow up with me later, you can find me on LinkedIn or just reach out however you like. So I want to dive in by just talking a little bit about the journey since I left Michigan. And you'll see here with this slide, I've tried to paint a picture of all the steps in it. Honestly, hasn't been a completely linear path. I've been in two different companies. So I started out originally at Whirlpool, Southwest Michigan, for those that are familiar with that area. And along the way, while I was based at Whirlpool, I went and got a master's degree at Northwestern. We had a lot of traffic back and forth between Chicago, so it was kind of a natural thing to do to add that in. Very quickly, I got really involved with developing talent and developing people, and got into design management role at a very early part of my career. And really since that point, that has been the main theme. Working at first with the KitchenAid brand studio, so leading design for all of KitchenAid, really storied billion-dollar American brand, that we had globalized a little bit while I was there, and then moving to 3M, where basically everything I've done at 3M has been new to the company. First getting design itself established within our consumer business at a functional level. So for example, like writing the first job descriptions for designers. When I joined the company, believe it or not, that didn't exist at that time. Then moving out to Asia, developing design in a couple of locations. I'll bring that to life for you just in a minute. And then now coming back to the US, what I do is I lead design across all of our international studios, with also some folks based in the US as well. I see in the chat there's a question that's come up. I don't know, John, if you want to address that now or what.
I just put out a notice to the students that they're free to drop questions into the chat at any time, and that we'll leave time at the end for questions as well. So that's not actually a question, it's me just telling them, hey, ask questions.
Brilliant. Happy to do that. Cool. So, gave you a little bit of more visual flavor of the kinds of things I've been working on. It really has spanned the whole gamut. So when I went to Michigan originally, it was for industrial design. And at that time, I think industrial design really meant a lot of different things than it does today. The field itself has evolved dramatically. And, as I mentioned before, I got much more into leadership of design in general. So covering multiple disciplines. Could be UX design, could be graphic design, color finish material for multiple industries. So today at 3M, it's really kind of a cool place to be because I have the opportunity to work across a lot of different industries while staying within one company. 3M has a really broad portfolio spanning, industrial manufacturing, personal safety, healthcare. Healthcare is a really fast growing business for us. The consumer products at retail, which I'm sure everybody here is familiar with, brands like Post-it, Scotch-Brite, Command, and so on. And then we also have what we call transportation electronics. And in my team, and I spend a lot of time focused on that, working with the car companies, the auto OEMs, the consumer electronics OEMs, also could be, hospitality industry, could be the municipal infrastructure. If we're talking about airports, talking about railway systems, we have a lot of products that go into that whole ecosystem that design has a great opportunity to really think about, what's possible for those spaces and places, what kind of experiences could we create? And so if we bring that to life together with our customer, it really helps to create value for them, but also for our company as well. And so 3M Design is kind of the new kid on the block, if you will. It hasn't been with the company that long. 3M itself, started in 1902. So very much coming up on 120 years of business. But design at 3M is a project that really dates back about 10 years or so for formally organizing design into a function at scale at the company. I like to say that, for a long time, for many decades, we had designers at 3M, but we didn't have design as a function at the company. And I feel very fortunate because I had an opportunity to build, very much the bones of this from a very early stage. And then as we've scaled up, as we've added leadership in other areas, added capabilities, it's really come to life in a cool way. And so today, this is where my team is mapped to. I'm leading designers in all 6 locations around the world. Biggest presence is in Asia. As I said, I used to live in Japan. Had a lot of hands-on work in building the teams in China, India, in Japan, and also Korea as well. Just last week, I was in Europe for the Milan Design Week, one of the largest furniture fairs, interior design fairs in the world. And we were doing some really great stuff. I'll show you just in a minute what that looked like. And then also at the headquarters, we have some really cool capabilities around augmented reality and virtual reality design that we're getting into, or design for vehicle films, automotive expressions, and so on. Here's a survey course of the kinds of things that we get into. So design at 3M is a very big tent. As I said before, when you get into the design world, I think you'll all discover very quickly that it's never just one kind of design. You're going to be jogging across very different types of design. In some areas, you might partner with specialists. Other areas, you might have to build the capability yourself. But as a design leader, being familiar with how all of this glues together is a really key part of the role, if you will. So we have a lot of strength depending on the business. So for example, if we're talking about the consumer business, we're talking about dealing with, Walmart, Target, large retailers, retailers in other countries, obviously consumer packaged goods, that brand design, the packaging design, the product design for retail products, all of that comes together in that process. I want to give you a quick tour of what we look like around the world. So this is our studio in Japan. This was opened in 2017, really elevating design to a strategic capability. Before, I would say design in Japan was fairly kind of a transactional approach. Certainly very talented people, but not really engaged with the leadership in the way that they are today. So big step up for the team there. India, very same story. So, historically a component of the R&D process, now very front and center with engaging our customers. In fact, the design center in India, in Bangalore, has become a great customer meeting point, at least pre-pandemic. Now we're doing things a little bit more virtually, but we designed the space so it could be a very inclusive environment for people to come together and get hands-on with our products. Shanghai in China, we just opened this in 2019, just months really before everything kind of stopped with the pandemic. And actually now we're talking about a second generation center, as we take things forward from here. This has been an exciting space because, our designer team in Shanghai actually has a really broad scope. It connects with multiple businesses. And I think everybody knows this is an area of the world where there's very strong growth, a lot of opportunity. It's an exciting place to be doing business. In Korea, we have a small studio that's very specialized, very high talent, and we've been selectively doing customer-focused events, either with auto OEMs or the architectural community, getting a little bit into product design and so on. As I think everybody here knows, there's a lot of very, very global brands based in Korea, Samsung, LG, Hyundai, Kia, et cetera, all those, so being connected with their design teams is an advantage for us. in Milan. Very, very interesting studio there. A lot of experience. Milan is one of our oldest studios in the company. And it actually, it's older than the design center based in the US or any of the other centers around the world. This is kind of a historical home for design, and the company very tied in with customer engagement at the EMEA level, so Europe, Middle East, and Africa scale. And then finally, St. Paul. So the headquarters for the company, for those of you who know, Minnesota Mining and Manufacturing, that's the 3M. So it's based in Minnesota. And we have a design center that was opened in 2016, which really put design on the map. Before that, we've had smaller studios kind of embedded with different areas in the organization, but this was that first full-scale, all-inclusive, all different businesses bringing design together for the entire company and really giving design an identity. I think when I look back at my career, that's been a key part of the story, is really creating an identity for design within companies, finding ways to build bridges with people in different functions. If they're, for example, they're in a business role or they're in an engineering role, their concept of design is going to be whatever it is until you fill in that gap for them and tell the story. And because design is so experiential, we have to bring that story to life in a way that's very, very easy to understand. And so, a lot of the things that we have in that space are geared towards engagement with customers. And we'll have areas that are, open areas for workshopping and bringing ideas, different kinds of teams with their needs together. And so this whole theme around customer engagement is one that I'm going to spend some time on here from here on out through the presentation today. So one of the things that my team on international, I think we specialize in this, is the customer engagement piece. A lot of our teams are located closely to the designers, that we do business with. So again, auto OEMs, consumer electronics companies, infrastructure, that kind of thing. That's highly localized. Not everything is based in the US. And so having designers that are right there in the field, able to work, side by side with their design peers at another business, that gives us an advantage here. So here, for example, this picture, this is a picture of our head of design for Korea, and he's given an update and talking about what's inspiring with some of our architectural films, talking with different architects and interior designers. We do a lot of that kind of engagement, to get hands-on with them. I think to sum up the theory behind all of this, I take the view that designers, if you're working in a company, say you're working in a car company or an appliance company like I used to work in, every day we are thinking about the future of that company's business. We're thinking about the needs of our customers, where they're going, what they need, and what do we need to do to be competitive in the future. So designers are not kind of at the end of the stage, they're really the beginning, I think they should be, thinking about where that company's business is going to go. And so if they're thinking about that, we in 3M have an opportunity to build relevance with them throughout their entire career journey. So for example, I think one great opportunity for us is all of the color finish material studios at different design schools. Right now, I would say we've got a long way to go for 3M materials, and tools to be there and available so people can understand, what the potential is. Just reaching out and having a conversation today and just bridging the gap. I hope, if nothing else, I hope to transform an understanding of what 3M is all about from, that Post-it note and Scotch tape brand to something a lot richer than that. So every part of the career journey is an area that we want to connect. We want to connect also at every stage of the creative process. So we're talking about trend research. My team does a lot of that kind of work where we're talking with architects and interior designers and helping to think through, what's the future of workspaces? What's the future of commercial buildings? Sometimes we'll do, student programs like the one we did recently with CCS, thinking about, what happens next and how should we think about that? And then wherever we choose to find inspiration and express themselves. So this just points to the need to be relevant across all kinds of areas. So you're putting this together, our ambition is to be much more connected to the design world than we have been before. And not from, say, a marketing standpoint, but from design to design. So we as designers want to be ambassadors for the company, reaching out to our peers in other industries. So maybe a little bit more detail on what that looks like, in a practical sense. So the work that we do is very much first grounded in inspiration. 3M materials are capable of a lot of very cool and unexpected things. And our technology platforms can do a lot of stuff that most people, they're not going to know that until we show that to them. And so building really inspiring experiences that get people thinking differently is a key part of what we do. With that, if we do that well, we can go to the next phase, which is really about imagining possible futures. So for example, how should the city of Tokyo transform for the Olympics? My team is working very closely on that. And a lot of the work that we did, ultimately went out there into the space. We have to sort of think ahead around what these future spaces could be, future experiences could be, and really bring that to life. We do that well, we get the opportunity to collaborate. And this is where, we're actually creating direct value. Everybody wins here, ideally, where our customers, will do something fantastically creative that's enabled by the potential of the products that we sell. On the other hand, we as 3M, get the benefit of being a partner in that process. So a lot of examples in that space. I'll show some in just a bit. I want to start though with that whole point around inspiration. So the whole concept of material science plus design, we've been trying to, think about what's a good way to frame this up. Historically, the company is a material science company. Now we've become much more than that. We've gotten much more into digital services and software platforms and things like that. And it's the kinds of things many people wouldn't expect that 3M does. We've really started to build. But material science is very much a core for us. And it goes all the way back to the founding of the company. So if we take that and we add design to it, I think we can start to really express it, and invite a conversation about what's possible. And so technology platforms, if you think about the company and everything that we do, we've had to find some way to really deconstruct this and make it more, say, building block approach where, there's so much things to have a list, I think is not effective. For us, this whole approach to showing kind of a chemistry model is useful. It does build a lot of bridges with people with a grounding in material science. And so this is the starting point. This is kind of a candy store, if you will, for us to be working within. So I want to give you one example of, one way into this kind of thinking, just focusing on a very simple consideration in design. If you're working in product design, you're working in UX design, you're working in automotive, you're working in architecture, you're going to be concerned about the way that light is working. How does that work on a surface? How does it work on an emissive property? What is light doing? Because, frankly, we need light in order to see things. And, it's core to the whole idea of an experience. So if we unpack this a little bit and look at, our materials, we have materials that have the ability to guide light in really interesting ways through materials that might have a certain quality. So imagine a cube that is sort of metallic finish, brushed, very quiet aluminum look, but then you can backlight it and you can create these amazing patterns through the layering of different optical qualities on there. Or we can have light that can bend into different colors and in a very, very, say, essential and effective way, using an object which is very light to create this kaleidoscopic event based on, just the simple way that the light will move through those materials. Some of our materials have a certain, say flexible property to them. And also at the same time, they have an ability to reflect in a really unique way. And what you're looking at here on the screen is an example of us looking at materials which are currently used in a consumer electronics application, like a large format display, and asking, what more could we do with this? It has this really interesting way of reflecting things. And, we just want to show that and bring that to life. So while this looks like a very deep pattern of light going into the back, it's really only a couple of point sources on the edge. And what's happening is that that light is cascading and bouncing back and forth. to create this really, really beautiful pattern. Now, having this kind of background in the material science allows us to start thinking about, how could this be applied to different contexts, like, say an automotive context, being able to say, like, here's different things that you could do. Here's different ways you can think about how these materials might create different experiences within a space. Now, I was talking about reflectivity there. Now, for example, reflectivity can also have a very different approach. I think everybody here is very familiar with road signage. If you're driving down the road, your headlights are going to reflect back the signs very brightly, directly to you. Well, that's a material that we make. It's called a retroreflective material. Most people don't know that material can actually be very, very finely controlled. So it doesn't have to be at the scale of a road sign. It doesn't have to be at, say a construction vest or safety vest. We can start really getting very precise with that. And as you see here with this prototype that my team built a couple of years ago now, they're thinking about different ways to create patterns that, it really reflect in very unexpected ways. So if you're taking a picture of it, it can really reflect back. Here's another example of this. So, you look at this car, it shows off something I think a lot of people know that 3M does well, which is really high quality graphics films. We can create beautiful images at scale with our films. But when we've added this extra level of detail to it, where it gets this reflectivity going, not just within the film, but also the striping here, it's pretty special. So this is not Photoshop. This is actually what will happen when you take a picture with a flash on. It'll just light itself up in an amazing way. So all of these things come together. I just showed you a little bit of lighting there. All of this comes together in this whole experience that we've built that we're calling design meets design. And what's going on with this is we're creating this whole ecosystem of really interesting materials explorations. They get conversation going, get people thinking about, hey, wow, I didn't expect to see that. I didn't really know this was possible with materials. Tools that we can get our hands on, we can start crafting things and invite conversation. For example, merging 3D printing with films to create hyper real finishes that can be controlled down to a very fine detail. Different way to think about designing a surface. And so we've been bringing this to life directly with customers, getting them hands-on, getting them engaged in it. I've at this point, my team and I have met with, I would say, close to 5,000 designers across multiple industries, different venues, different levels of scale. And it always has created conversation, always gets something, going to think about, hey, what could we do this? Could we try that? Could we think differently? So in a sense, at 3M, the role that we're playing for design is a little bit of a hybrid role compared to what you might see at an OEM or definitely an agency, where we are on one part designing products and experiences for our own company. It could be a software platform for healthcare, could be a consumer product for retail, and so on, or could be a new architectural finish. We're working on those kinds of things, but we're also, I think more importantly, we're enabling the design process for our customers. And we think that's where the real value comes from. So a lot of great examples in this space. I can't tell you the name of this company, but this is one of the top auto companies in the world. We put together a on-site exhibition of materials, invite their whole team in, kind of spend a couple of days with them, just being there as a partner in the industry. It's amazing what comes out of that kind of contact as we work together. Partnerships like this, with Joe Nagasaka and the Schemata. When I was in Japan, we were launching a new architectural finishes collection that has a really super hyper realistic finish on it. Basically, it's a new product type. I think a lot of people are very familiar with, film and like the sort of fake wood, fake film, that kind of thing. And in a lot of ways, people say, well, films have their place, but if I want to really use a real material, I've got to go with that. We introduced something that really invites a whole new conversation, in that it is super real. It feels just like a veneer, but it's also got all the properties of an engineered material as well. We call it our MAT series, and it has just been an awesome business for us as we've rolled this out. Other great partnerships, like the one you see here, this was with Sony. We were working, so we've had a bit of a relationship over the last couple of years with Sony on various events. This is an exhibition in the Ginza district in Tokyo. Our team working with their team to provide some guidance on materials selection. They, of course, they own the whole concept of this, but they've been very grateful for the input that we've provided, to the point where they've actually put our name alongside their event as well. Recently in design, Shanghai, just literally a couple of months ago, we had another new launch, great collaboration with Yang Design there. This is a agency which has a big focus on trend research, and they have an event at Design Shanghai, which is focused on up and coming materials, new finishes, that kind of thing. And so what a great partnership for us, for us to be thinking about different and creative ways to express the materials. So I particularly like the motorcycle there that's been wrapped in some of our films, just to really push the envelope of what's possible with that. So then we have Milan Salone. So last week, this is kind of bringing it full circle. I was in Milan, and we were, continuing on a tradition now that we've had going for 10 years. So this covers back to 2016, but actually our first 3M design installation at the Design Week was in 2011. This year, we added something completely new to the mix. This was the first time we took out a virtual reality experience for our customers. So we call it 3M Home. And the concept here is that we're going to bring to life the potential of 3M materials within a virtual space where you can really break the rules that would govern things in the physical world. There's just a lot of things you can't do in the physical world, like scale up things to infinity, or move large objects, bring in things and exit things very, very fluidly. You can do that in a VR environment. And so we built a number of spaces. One of them was a virtual coffee shop that our customers could come in and start pointing and changing different materials, interacting and picking things up, examining objects in VR space. Super cool. That's a new frontier for us that we're really learning by doing. We also had two great partnerships. We had a partnership with Elle Decor, so the fashion magazine. They did a great exhibition with us, and we had a whole, virtual home built there by Elisa Asino, who just did a fantastic job with showing what's possible with the materials. We also had a great exhibition at the Archambault Theater, where there was a competition to redesign all the dressing rooms there. And so our finishes were brought into that process. So Milan, this is just a bit of a review of some examples, really, really special and expressive uses of our materials. I think the coolest thing about this is that 3M is there, but we're not, they say, the front stage of this. This is really all about enabling the creativity of our customers. I mean, for us, we're going to enable their success. We're not there to be trying to say like, well, we know everything. It's really the other way around. We know a lot about material science, and we can help, fuel the creativity of designers in many different fields. So this is a little bit of a showcase for what happened just this year. You can see, folks there that are wearing VR headsets. In the upper right there, this was an opportunity to recolor this whole chair to choose different materials within a VR space, and then take a digital selfie based on this. So, in a sense, it's like a completely breaking the barriers of, how people might think about design for an interior. I'm going to talk a little bit about school projects before I wrap up here. So throughout my career, I have done a lot of interactions with universities. One with University of Michigan now, a couple of years ago, we were looking at a design charrette for healthcare and focusing on, at that time, it was the Ebola crisis. Recently did a great collaboration with CCS that was focusing on the future of commercial spaces within the city of Detroit and how we could use that as a way to make a positive impact for the city. Again, having grown up in Metro Detroit myself, I'm well aware of the history, and it's amazing to see the progress that has happened, since I was a kid growing up there. And this, kind of brought a lot of things home for me. So fantastic project. We also did another program with CCS in 2018 that was more automotive focused. We're talking about future of automotive spaces. Great project like this one. This was with MCAD. And the thinking here was, going to a school that had a very focused illustration, graphic design track. Let's give those students the opportunity to show their stuff on, one of the best known stationery brands in the world with Post-it. So marrying these two things up, again, we weren't the focus. It was really all about them. So we were putting them on the packaging, giving them an opportunity to really, market themselves and build their career from there. And there's a project here, which I think is actually pointing the way towards future projects that we're going to be doing a lot more of that have a very, very clear social impact intent. This is a program from now it's a couple of years ago, working with a design school in Mexico City called Centro. And they were interested in thinking about how can we envision future scenarios? How can we bring our creativity to think about ways to address youth who are not employed and not in school, otherwise, known as NEETs. And they put together some really awesome films that just narrated possible futures. And 3M products were brought into this, but it was kind of definitely not the center of attention. It was, if anything else, it was an enabler. Special project. And these are the kinds of things I want us to think more about, because I think we all know this well. The mission of design is far beyond a specific product or a specific software interface like it used to be. I mean, designers are thinking much more about the social impact, the role that we all can play from an environmental, social, and governance standpoint as well. So I want to offer up a couple of takeaways. Not saying I know everything at all, but I just thought before I wrap up here, maybe a couple of thoughts. Since it's been nearly 20 years since I left Michigan, some takeaways that is one thing that has rung true the whole time is that design is a talent profession. We're not a process profession, we're a talent profession. We're very much bounded on the capabilities that all of us individually have and our ability to ignite and create capability in other people. And, designers that get the best out of other people are really set up for success. So, something to just take away from the time that I've been working. Another one is that customer focus always wins. So I think sometimes the craft of design can become the focus. And if we're going down that road, what ends up happening is we lose sight of who we're designing for and what we're really trying to accomplish as a value add with other people. And so that big picture view, taking an outside view, looking at customers, looking at the broader world, thinking about, where does design click into all of that? How can I create value in that space? That really is a next level approach to design. As I've worked with designers throughout my whole career, the folks that people are looking inside the company never seem to quite get the traction of the folks that are looking outside and thinking about what they can do to create connections and value add. Another big thought on this is that design at a specific sense is kind of the wrong way to think about it. I like to think that, if you're working on any type of project, you start with asking, why is that? You go through all the whys, to get down to the bedrock. And I found it as you go through those whys, you tend to broaden the thinking, broaden the scope. So for example, if we're thinking about, we need to design a product with a certain brand sensibility. Okay, well, what is that brand? Maybe that brand isn't well designed. Maybe it's not well articulated. Maybe we actually need to spend time thinking about the brand architecture. Then we need to think about how that brand architecture informs the product architecture. What kind of data flows work through that whole system to really create a sustainable system. All of that, again, the more that we think at that level, the more it takes us to a more strategic role and really allows us to add a lot more value in any process that we're in. Number 4 is that design never succeeds alone. So I think, especially in a company context where you're working with all these other players, all these other functions, they have sometimes different agendas, very different backgrounds. It's very easy. It's very tempting for designers to be kind of on their own wavelength and in their own world. And that never ends well. Design at the end of the day, we have to get the doors open. We have to invite collaboration. And frankly, this is, for all of us here, as you think about your career, you're going to be the teacher. You're going to be teaching other people about what design does and can do. for as a partner and as an inspiration with everyone else. Last but not least, reinforced again and again and again in my career is that being mobile and not theory driven, takes you to another level. So go out into the world, go see stuff directly. You'll hear a lot about the need for ethnography, in-person observational research to create understanding. I mean, that's a component of this bigger idea that you have to go and see, you have to be in the environment. It's, for me, driven me around the world. I've traveled to now 26 countries, have lived abroad. I think that sensibility allows for so much more to be possible than kind of being in your own world and driving whatever theory you want. So anyway, I hope this is useful. I try to boil it down a little bit, but I think we're good on time. So maybe we can pause here, and John, I can turn it back over to you.
Yeah, Kevin, thank you so much. If you want to stop your screen share, that's great. We actually have some questions in the chat already. And certainly I encourage everybody, if you want to pop questions into the chat or just do the raise hand feature, either way works well. And so we'll start with Abigail, and Abigail is asking, what kind of advice would you have for your younger self?
And that's a big one. I saw that come up in the chat here, and I'm like, wow. I guess we'd have to narrow it down into some subjects here, but I think that I wish I could have accelerated that go and see factor. I think, if it was possible to travel more at a younger age, that would have helped move things even more quickly. I think that, that's always been something that I found as a catalyst. And I really didn't start traveling much until I was well into my career at Whirlpool. I think another point I would just add, which is kind of related to that, is just the relationship piece, is connecting across disciplines, forming relationships. It's always led to growth in some way. So, but that's an intimidating question. I would say I got to come back with a better answer for you. So.
But actually, I very much appreciate the idea of go and see things sooner. Don't wait. Expose yourself to as much as you can. You never know where inspiration will strike. You never know what you'll learn culturally that will be helpful. So I think that's actually really great advice. Abigail's also curious about how difficult it was to be, visiting all of these studios across the world with different languages.
Well, what I've learned is that there's a kind of a knack for that, if you will. It requires a lot of humility, a lot of listening and observation. Because again, having lived abroad, I saw the expats that worked and the expats that don't work, like and I think that you have to be open to allowing that other culture to reinvent you a little bit and really take you in a completely different direction that you didn't expect. So I think a lot of people think, well, that might be inauthentic, I'm going to be myself and they're going to be them and blah, blah, blah. But, living in another space or being in any other, outside the US context for any length of time, it's going to start changing you. And you got to embrace that. I think, the language part is a tough one. I've learned Japanese since I lived abroad, and that's a daily practice and I still keep up with it, but other countries, it's like, you got to rely on those partnerships, so again, I think that humility really creates the right kind of context for others to help you. And, in that way you start stitching together their ideas with yours in a bigger way.
Yeah, thank you so much. Jesse actually has two questions, and I love the first one, quite honestly. What experiences in your career cemented your confidence in your design leadership?
Yeah, these are good questions today. You guys, yeah. So I became the leader of the KitchenAid brand studio at 26. And I was already leading a substantial part of the creative process for the studio before that. Um, and not to get into all the nitty gritty of it, but I think one of the things that taught me was, having that systems approach, thinking about the whole architecture of things. It starts to depersonalize the conversation from, yeah, it's not just about, well, I'm a designer and I'm a design leader, so I get to tell you what to do. It's like, no, let's lay out the architecture, let's lay out the thought process here, and let's look at that bigger picture of how we can competitively differentiate. And now we're having a productive conversation that I happen to just be leading it. So that right there, I think that bigger systems view is a way in on this. Another thing that, and maybe this is just coming to mind now, but I've never been afraid to come into an environment and just start from nothing. I mean, when I don't want to say embarrass anybody here, but several points of my career at either Whirlpool or 3M, I've had to come in, and get a trash can and clean out an old desk or an old room and assemble a little studio and start with nothing. And, being confident that I can work at that level and I can work at this level too is, I think it opens doors. I've seen, a number of times, so it's like a common failure mode with some designers is they'll come in and they're like, well, unless I have, the huge Cintiq and the Aeron chair and everything all set up and everything perfect in the coffee machine, and I can't think straight. And it's like, we got to live in the real world, I think is what's worked for me.
Yeah. So, Jesse, I think that Kevin actually addressed a lot of the second question there too. Do you have anything else that you would like to hear from Kevin that maybe he didn't hit upon in the second question?
Yeah, I think you definitely covered it. I appreciate you taking some time to answer that.
Yeah. And just so everybody knows, if you can look at the chat, the second question was around how are you able to recognize and grow your talent in management? And just the last example alone of I'm just going to go into a space and clean it up, and like you're literally um, like an exemplar of what you would want, and how you manage both yourself and other people. So that was great. Aaron, do designers at 3M work within a specific field like product design or materials, or do they get to work across the different focuses, for example, product design and user experience design?
I really appreciate that question because we do both. I really like to think of everybody I work with, all of my colleagues, that they're all individuals. They're not a label, they're not a profession, and that creates a bounding box around them. There are some people within our community that are super specialized and they do one thing super well, and they're the expert for the company in that space. But then we have people that are really, they can track across different things. They can just start teaching themselves different things. And that's not limited to any particular country. For example, in Japan, we had somebody who's been a long time product designer, really solid product design ability, can do a little bit of packaging too. But if you want to design a thing, like they'll just take it on. Started jumping into virtual reality platforms and creating a whole web-based experience for customer engagement, just because he wanted to learn something new. And it's like that. I love that. That's when we start expressing the totality of what people are really capable of. So I'm not a big fan of labels. I know it looks good on org charts. It's like, okay, I got these number of people, and if I want to grow my empire, I'm gonna have to add more people. I'm like, that's not my style, if I was to say that.
Wow. Um, I immediately just kind of flashed on, ooh, Kevin having an empire. That would be really cool.
Well, I'm paraphrasing what I think, is a very typical corporate mindset. I'll just say
Yeah.
that is,
No, but I think Kevin's empire would be very different from that. So, so Rochelle, I love this. Obviously, the path may vary from person to person, but is there a more typical path that leads into the material science side of design?
that's another interesting question. I got to say that so my way into the CMF world came in through product design. So when I was at KitchenAid, the stand mixer, it's an iconic product. Definitely weren't going to be touching the design of that anytime soon, but the color story really, built the image of that way beyond what it was originally. And so, there's a lot of work going on in CMF and, extend that out to the other products too. There's a lot of alignment between the appliance world and home decor. So we're talking and looking at home decor for influences. So it's like starting in that context, you start getting the industry language and it starts to build up a capability. There are people that, combine background in materials science, materials engineering, or chemical engineering to get really under the hood of the materials world. As we built up the color finish material lab at Whirlpool, we had people that were on one level, they're more trend research oriented. They're more thinking about themes in the industry. And then there's people that are thinking about execution, and they're very dialed into the manufacturing of, could be a powder coat finish, could be a, say, metals finish, could be a plastics approach, et cetera, et cetera. So, it tends to be kind of customized because CMF is definitely not to the scale of, you say, UX design. UX is massive. There's tons of hiring going on. It's a lot of the same kind of stuff. UX, you have to get to the context. I'm sorry, CMF.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for that. Sarah, what were some actions you took during your junior and senior year at Michigan to set you up for success in job searching?
So a couple thoughts on that. I think back to that time. I was also not just at Michigan, but during the summer, I was taking some continuing education classes at CCS, and I think that was really smart because it broadened. It's an outside point of view. I'm just getting a different perspective. That was one piece of it, but honestly, like staying involved with IDSA, I mean that actually gave me the opportunity to start at Whirlpool. What happened was I was doing my senior project, and it was a self-assigned project that I was thinking about a future internet appliance for Whirlpool. Because it sounds kind of like a joke now, but it's like 20 years ago, the idea of an internet appliance was kind of, speculative. There was no iPad at that time. There was, laptops were huge and chunky, and the idea of a very slim, kind of accessible iPad style experience was, we hadn't seen that yet. So I was digging into that project, and it was basically a UX design and product design project. I went to an IDSA event that was hosted at Michigan. That was titled Business of Design. And I remember getting up out of my chair and talking to the design director who was from Whirlpool, who was there at the time. And I just said, hey, I've got this project. I'm just curious for some feedback. Like, what do you think about this? And, I'm not asking for an internship. I'm not asking for anything. I just want to get your feedback. So he invited me to come out to the design center in Benton Harbor in Southwest Michigan. And I presented the story. And then I get a call like 2 days later for, hey, so you want to be an intern with us? So long story short, like, I think that outside view of just thinking about what are industry trends, what are the stories that, where's the world going, to give yourself a conversation starter, if nothing else, to just ask industry peers for feedback, that got me into Whirlpool. I mean, just to be real clear. I think that kind of thing should translate pretty well to other industries.
Yeah, and I very much appreciate how that connects with the lunch and learn that we're doing right now is having someone like you come in, explaining, not only what does, design mean with 3M, but also allowing the students to have access to someone like you that they could follow up and find out more, in detail. So just really great for that perspective of get outside, see what's going on in the real world.
Well, yeah, John, I really want to build on that point while we still have it here is for everybody on the list, Miles already reached out to me once. My door's open. I mean, especially Michigan folks, please feel free to contact me. I think of that as my job in terms of, the up and coming talent pipeline and the overall health of the industry. As a leader in design, if I'm not engaged, it's like, what are we doing? So.
Yeah, and Miles, I see your hand, so go for it.
Uh, yeah. Hi, Kevin. You mentioned in your presentation about like 3M kind of they focus on developing their own products or materials, but also right you work and collaborate with other companies. I was just curious, like, is that like a pretty neutral balance between like the work that's done, or is it leaning towards one side, where you're more focused on the development of like the materials and like what you guys are doing at 3M, or is it more collaborations with other companies and doing the stuff like they did with Sony or any of the other like companies that you showed as examples?
I think we're very fortunate in the team that I lead, where it's really never boring. I mean, we are able to work on a lot of different kinds of things. I would not call it like your classic model line refresh approach. I mean, at an OEM like Whirlpool, for example, I mean, we were thinking about model lines, 5-6 years in advance, and we're kind of designing on this sort of cadence, if you will. For us, it's a bit more opportunity driven. So, just this morning, I was talking with one of the business and lab teams about engaging the design team at one of the world's most recognizable consumer electronics companies. We're teaming up because we're going to pitch a new material, and we want to think about, what's the right way to talk about this from a design perspective. So we were doing that. And then, last night we're talking with China about, overall capability build out for brand identity. And it's just a lot of stuff. And I find that awesome to be working in.
Yeah. And Sarah, do you want to just go ahead and ask your second question directly?
Yeah, I was just curious, kind of going off of that, what your day-to-day looks like. I was really interested by like the photo you showed us of the studio space, because I think like having those open spaces is something that works really well for me. But like when you wake up and go to work, like what does that look like for you?
Well, it's those studios. Not any of us are not using those right now. They're kind of the pre-pandemic image of the world. I have been working remotely for 7 years plus 8 years now, whether I was living in Asia or here. And you could maybe call that a hybrid role too, but I just don't need an office in the traditional sense, because my role is all about bringing people together, elevating talent, coaching and mentoring in 6 different countries around the world. So it's kind of an anytime, anywhere type of role. I have to be careful to not load up the day, from 6 to 10 p.m. So it's like totally impossible to sustain that. So the typical day is actually kind of a lot of variety to it. I would say, for the designers that are based in the US, they are, well, since we've just launched at 3M, the Work Your Way program. I mean, basically we've just said, folks can define how they want to work. So some of our team members actually have moved out of the state or are living abroad in the country. And, I think we've all recognized like the technology is so good now with the, video chats or VR chat or however you want to connect, that we just can think differently about it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Actually, Sarah, while I have you, because I actually love your other question in the chat, would you mind asking that question directly of Kevin?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Another question I put in the chat was just, is there anything in particular that stands out to you in portfolios or experience now that you're a professional that you wish you would have known, like going into your like job search process?
Yeah, well, back when I was, so if I go back 20 years ago, my mindset was, boy, I'm not nearly the level of presentation drawing that, you might see in some other schools. And again, I think Michigan has grown a lot since where it was 20 years ago, to be fair. So like, I wouldn't want to compare that to today, but I just thought, well, somebody else's sketches are better looking than mine, so I'm just going to not ever win. And as I've learned, like, it's really all about the narrative and the sort of outside in business context, people context. What are you trying to do in the world? Spoken to other people in a direct way. In that sense, it's similar to the kinds of things they would teach at a business school about leadership. And I learned really early on that actually designers all have an opportunity to be leaders. A lot of them don't think that way, but they do. So, I mean, if somebody had clued me into that earlier, or I'd woken up, it would have maybe changed some things. But again, I think things worked out well because I was kind of already thinking about creating stories and just asking questions and creating a dialogue. And that's, again, that started the things with Whirlpool.
Yeah. Yeah, everybody, thank you so much. We're actually sort of at the end of our time. So Kevin, huge thank you, thank you, thank you. It was just as amazing as I knew it would be. And I also know how to be in touch with Kevin. So if you feel more comfortable reaching out to me and I can kind of be a conduit, I'm happy to do that. Before we completely stop, Kevin, do you have any last words?
Well, John, I just would like to repeat what I was telling when we were framing this up. I mean, I'm very proud of my time at Michigan, and I really hope to be a resource, to whatever extent is useful. I think that's a role I should be playing as a leader in the design world, and I wish everybody all the best. I'm not sure where everybody is in their career, but I'm sure you've got some big ideas and are going to do really cool stuff, and can't wait to see it.
Thank you. And everybody who's here, thank you for being here. Don't forget Lunch and Learn. There's 2 more throughout the semester, as well as the From Here to There series and the Career Bootcamp. And of course, I'll send email. So everybody enjoy the rest of your day and have a great weekend.
Bye, everybody. See you.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Thank you, Kevin.